it can help to have this sort of medium between your life and someone else's perspective through art. These little hidden gems, these little tidbits of insight, they're so good for inspiration. This is my inspiration secret, honestly. Hello and welcome back to my channel. I will be talking about songwriting inspiration today. It's kind of the elusive snow leopard of the art world. And if you're new here, welcome, and I hope you find this useful and interesting. I'm actually in a new setup here. I'm in a new space. I just moved, and I think that this spot will be a lot better for filming, so I'm really excited to make some new content. So, inspiration. It's kind of the elusive snow leopard of the art world. Sometimes we might listen to other musicians or artists and kind of be envious or be jealous because we don't know like what inspired them to write such a beautiful song or such an incredible chord progression, whatever it is. But it's not as elusive as it might seem, and there are things you can do to sort of increase your inspiration and find things that sort of stimulate your creativity on a regular basis. For any creative art, in order to gain inspiration, there needs to be some sort of input in order to get that output. And what I mean by this is it's not necessarily just the work that you're putting in, so the practicing and the songwriting work, but it's also what you're taking in and what you're consuming. So a really great tip for improving your creative inspiration is just consuming all sorts of different art, not just music, but podcasts, reading books, listening to audiobooks, watching films, watching movies, documentaries. Take in other art forms. So for example, you could listen to podcasts. There's such a huge selection of different podcasts out there on basically any topic you could imagine under the sun. So anything that piques your interest, there's a chance that you could find inspiration in it. So for example, I love history podcasts because I love stories. So not necessarily just history, but any podcast that has an interesting story in it, I want to hear it. Especially if it's personal, real life stories. I find that they really resonate with me and I can gain sort of like this insight from it. For example, there's this music production podcast I listen to, and when I first started listening, I don't know, I wasn't too convinced that it would help me write music or work on music production, but there's always that one part of the podcast or that one sort of sentence even that really resonates, and it's kind of like this tidbit of knowledge that I might take with me, and it's like a seed, and somehow I find it like coming into my playing or coming into my songwriting, and I realize like I was inspired by the podcast. So it's really a great idea to listen to radio stations and talk shows and things that can sort of maybe teach you something new or just give you an interesting idea to mull around in your head. So there's something I like to call hidden gems, and hidden gems are basically what I call the little insights that you gain when you're watching a film or looking at art or listening to podcasts or even music. These little hidden gems, they're basically just almost like a little realization. So when I'm listening to a story, there might be one specific part of that story that just so strongly resonated with me that it kind of piqued my interest and made me think about something in my life or something that I know about. And these little hidden gems, these little tidbits of insight, they're so, 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 so good for inspiration. You might not necessarily use them specifically, but they kind of like stimulate this creative part of our brains and really, really hold on to these little bits of insight. They're almost like little bits of wisdom, or I don't know, I just really like calling them hidden gems. And this is my inspiration secret, honestly. You can find hidden gems everywhere. Like, inspiration is all around you, but it's just these little moments where you kind of get like the chills or goosebumps, or something hits you, you know, like it hits different. And suddenly something that you've been thinking about for a while, or some song idea you've been thinking about for a while, it makes sense, and then it clicks that, hey, like, I'm gonna write a song about whatever that little tidbit is, that little insight. And it could honestly be about anything. So I also like mythology podcasts. I like anything with a story in it, and because these stories, I find they have a lot of little hidden gems, but whatever piques your specific interest could be inspiring to you. So it might be science, it might be tech stuff, whatever it is. It depends on the genre of music that you write as well, but I really like thinking about real people and real stories and seeing how it can inspire me to write music. Another thing I like to do for inspiration is experiencing new things. And I know that right now, in these current times, it's not exactly the easiest thing to be doing, because there's only so much we can do. Most of the time we're staying home. But if you can, try going for a walk and try going to a new place. Maybe take a drive or ride somewhere if possible. But if you can't do that, you can watch movies and documentaries. And something that I think works for me well, that inspires me, is watching something that I might not be actually that interested in. I know that's kind of contradictory to what I said earlier, but watching something that I might not necessarily pick for entertainment, but something with an interesting story or something very different. For example, I like some older films that might be considered sort of slow burns, or maybe boring in Hollywood standard of what's entertaining. But I found some pretty cool inspiration from films alone, just because of the stories and all the different sensory things in movies, like the colors and the scenery can be really interesting. And sometimes movies will take ideas and flip them on their heads and just make things really weird. I love anything weird, because it can inspire something new in you. For example, there's this movie called The Science of Sleep, and it just shows this surreal dreamy world, and that's a really inspiring movie. So there's a lot of potent inspiration in stories, and that's why I'm a big fan of books and movies and podcasts. Okay. Another reason I like stories and movies and podcasts and books is because they allow you to experience the world through someone else's perspective. Sometimes through a third person, sometimes directly through one specific character's perspective. And that can be really helpful in gaining insight into what others might be thinking, or just giving you a new experience, and you get to gain some of their knowledge and their insight that you might not otherwise be able to gain just living your own life. So while you can get insight from your own life, it can help to have this sort of medium between your life and someone else's perspective through art. So what I mean by that is, For example, when I think about things that sort of trouble me in my past, it can be a little too triggering or too intense, and it's helpful to think about it through the lens of a story. So even a video game can remind me of something in my past and will inspire me. For example, you might cry while playing a game if it's very emotional, or you might cry watching a movie, and well, why are you crying? It's not necessarily that you're so attached to that character, because that, you don't know them, and they might not even be a real person. It might just be a fiction. But the reason that it affects you is because it resonates with you on an emotional level, and it reminds you of your own experiences, and it can give you some pretty potent and deep insight into your own life. So there's a lot of inspiration to be gained from other art forms. I mean, you can do this with music as well. I'm a music lover, and I listen to all sorts of different genres because there's so much inspiration out there, and you never know when it can kind of come upon you. So the best thing you can do is just keep intaking art, intaking different kinds of art, new art that you might not have considered, listening to podcasts. Try to make it a daily goal to listen to something new or watch something new pretty much every day, or at least every week. Now, the other aspect of inspiration that I think is really important is, while it's really good to consume art and, be engaged with creativity, you also need to take time for mental clarity and space. So this can be done by sort of connecting your mind with your body, and there's different methods to do this. A lot of people talk about meditation, but meditation doesn't have to be, like the guided, put your headphones on and do the deep breathing exercises. You can also do it through sort of like mindful activities, like when you drink your coffee or your tea, you can sit down and do it mindfully. What I mean by that is you're sort of paying attention to the taste, and you're sort of savoring the moment. Or let's say you like to take hot baths or showers, savor it. And, when you have like a peaceful moment, it's important to really engage with it in the moment. And you need at least 10 minutes every day of this kind of mental peace and just connecting mind and body. And if it's something that is hard for you to do, practice, and it might take a little bit longer than 10 minutes to get into the zone, but inspiration is very much in the body, I find. It could be a mental thing, but it's a very visceral experience when you become inspired to write music or any kind of inspiration. Sometimes you get that like tingling feeling, and this kind of relates back to those hidden gems that I talked about. This sort of like, oh, like I know what they're talking about. I've experienced that, or wow, like that really touched me. And you get this, it like wells up in your throat almost, like you might even want to cry sometimes if it's like a really intense moment of inspiration. And for example, the other night I was just playing around on the piano, and I was playing with the chords and different chord progressions, and it just overcame me, this feeling of like, whoa, it's beautiful. This was a beautiful sound, and I could feel it in my whole body. And right away, I was inspired just by playing around with sounds and just like fully engaging with it, not thinking about anything else, just like, how does this sound? How does this chord progression feel? And I had to run upstairs and like write a song. I mean, I don't know if the song is good, it doesn't really matter, but that inspiration right there, that was a little hidden gem. And it was just a moment of like mental clarity, and very much like almost like a meditative experience of playing the piano. And I'm not really a good piano player, but it doesn't matter. I was just sort of experiencing the chords and, playing around. I know a thing or two on the piano, but I'm not a pianist by any means. But so if you take away 3 things from this little chat, it's that inspiration can be found everywhere, but you kind of have to seek it and put in a bit of effort. But don't see it as work. See it rather as play, that you are curious to know what's out there and what might inspire you today. So let it come to you. And secondly, listen to and experience a variety of new things regularly. So new art forms, maybe it's poetry, maybe it's painting, maybe it's podcasts, or YouTube videos even, whatever it is. And look at it through this lens of curiosity. And if something's not working for you, maybe it's just not working for you. Try something new and you might be surprised. And finally, make sure to take time to get that sort of mental clarity and connect to your body. Because, like I said, music is a very tangible art form. It's very much experienced in the body. Our body feels, the vibrations of the sound. We listen, we use like our mental, we use our mind to process the lyrics, but a lot of it's very emotional. So you need to kind of slow down and connect with your body and, experience the moment a bit more closely. Another thing to remember is there will be times when you won't have inspiration. No matter how much art you're taking in or whatever it is, it will happen, and it's a normal part of any creative process. Sometimes you just need some time away, take a little break, take a little rest. But even when you're not feeling that inspired, you can still be sort of looking at the world through this creative lens and maybe looking out for those little hidden gems, because they might still pop up and you can sort of hold on to them and keep a journal, write down interesting ideas, or if it happens to you that you get inspired when you're out, you can just take some notes on your phone. I have the weirdest notes on my phone. I don't know. Let's look at a random one. Okay, so I wrote field, farm, forest, and the hill, driving, dressing up. Okay, so this was an idea that I had, some sort of inspiration. What else? I wrote, I'm dreaming, I'm far out. That was another note. So these are just random little tidbits of inspiration. They might not make sense to the person looking at them, but they were sort of like these little hidden gems of insight that I had, and I wanted to quickly write them down so I don't forget for when I go later. But yeah, keep writing, keep playing, and if you find my videos useful or interesting, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. And if you are keen to, click the little bell so you get notified whenever I upload a new video. I'll be doing more regular talks on songwriting and music, as well as uploading some music videos and other video logs, so stick around.